Learning vocabulary can be a real challenge, and if you've learnt beginning Greek and you've struggled to learn how to read, one of the reasons could be that the vocabulary acquisition approach or the vocabulary app that you've been using has really not served you very well. It's very possible that it's taken you this far but not far enough. So in this video I'm going to talk about vocabulary apps, and I have to warn you up front, even though I've been using particular apps over the years, I've really found that vocabulary apps have not really moved forward very far. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about at the end something that I've been working on that I think will help significantly. So stay tuned till that. But let's talk about what is it that makes a good vocabulary app that's going to help you learn the vocabulary systematically so you can learn the entire Greek New Testament and read it without having to depend on a reader's edition. Let's get into it. Vocabulary is critical for learning to read the Greek New Testament. You can't read the Greek New Testament if you don't know the words, and this is why so many people become dependent on reader's editions and having all of these helps and things that they have in their Bible to help them be able to read. You really just can't read if you don't know the words, and it's the biggest hindrance to being able to read as well. Now, for years I've used an app called Flashcards Deluxe, and I've recommended this to our users. Now, it was a pretty good app in many ways, certainly for its time, but it hasn't really progressed very much over the years, and it's challenging to set up, so I've stopped recommending that app. It's a great app, but it's not a great app for everybody, really just for a select few, and many people who I've recommended this app to have actually over time just given up on using vocabulary, and that's because it's missing some additional features which I think are really important for learning vocabulary, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Let's start by talking about features that are pretty common to most vocabulary apps, and then I'll go on to features that are less common but I think really important. First of all, you're going to be looking for a vocabulary app that works with the grammar that you are learning Greek from. So if you're learning Greek from basics of biblical Greek, you really want an app that provides you the vocabulary for that particular grammar as you are learning each chapter. And that's where a tool like Flashcards Deluxe is not so good. It comes with nothing, so you actually have to build everything from scratch. I think you want to be looking for an app that actually just has this built in. The second thing I think that's really important and that most apps have today is what's called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is a system effectively from helping you move your knowledge of any given word from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. Because when you first see a word, you might look at the word and you might not know what it is the first time. You flip the card over, you look at the back of it, and of course you remember what it is, and then you flip it back to the front again and you can remember the back. You might even put it, down for 5 minutes and pick it back up and be able to remember it. That's short-term memory. You want to be able to remember a word if you haven't seen it for a few weeks or months even at times. And so you want to be able to review these words and move them from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, and spaced repetition is a great way of doing that. Now, this is an area that's still got a lot of research going on in it, but most apps today have some form of spaced repetition in them, and you certainly don't want to get a vocab app that doesn't have spaced repetition. You want to have the app actually manage when you next see that word for review, because it's going to allow you to scale the number of words you learn to a much higher number of words overall. You'd be able to learn thousands of words using spaced repetition, whereas if you're using physical flashcards, you're going to tap out pretty quickly in the number of words you can actually learn without actually implementing something like this for yourself, which is really challenging to do if you have literally hundreds of cards to work your way through. Something that's become common more recently that was not at all common back when I started learning vocabulary was really the idea of having images and even sound connected to individual words. When I first learned Greek, none of these tools were around, and so really it was you would sound the word out yourself, and that would be the way you would learn it. But today we have tools that give you visual images of a word, and also it gives you the sound of a word as well, so that you can actually hear what it would sound like in Greek, whatever pronunciation system the app is giving you, if it gives you any. So many now give you an image, not as many give you the audio, and certainly not as many give you both. But certainly there are a number of apps out there today that do actually give you both the visual and the audible sound that goes with individual words. And I recommend if you are a visual learner, you're probably looking for an app that includes the images. If you're an Audible learner, which is more like what I am, then having the audio available is actually quite helpful, especially if you're not sure how to pronounce words when you're going through the early stages of learning Greek. Those aren't the only features that I think are helpful, and this is really where we start to leave apps like Flashcards Deluxe behind to say, well, what else do you really need to be able to learn the vocabulary for the Greek New Testament? And it comes back here in some senses to what are your goals. If your goal is really just to keep up with the class that you're in seminary, then there's plenty of apps out there that are going to help you with that. Just pick one that you like and run with it, as long as it's got those 4 things. But if you're serious about really learning to read the New Testament and you want a vocabulary app that's going to go further than that, then you're going to need some additional features. And in this next section, I'm going to tell you what those additional features are, at least what I think you're going to look for. But before we get into that, let me ask you to leave a comment below. Let me know what vocab app you're using and share with us why you like it as well. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below. And let's get into the things that I think you need beyond beginning Greek, and certainly if you're going to go beyond just the basics that we've just talked about. You want the vocabulary for the entire Greek New Testament, and you don't want a vocabulary by occurrence. There are some great apps out there that will provide you a vocabulary by occurrence, and in fact many professors and seminaries will have you learn vocabulary by occurrence. But I think this is a critical mistake, and I've talked about this in other videos on this channel. If you go back through and look at in fact, I might even do another video on this because it's been a long time. So if you're interested in a video on why you shouldn't learn vocabulary by occurrence, leave a message in the comment section below and I'll look at doing that. Otherwise, we'll carry on with the other subjects that I had in mind. Now, not only do you want vocabulary for the entire Greek New Testament, I think you actually want it to be arranged in such a way that it's really useful. And this is where the by occurrence thing really breaks down. You want to be reading the Greek, which means you need the vocabulary you're learning to be connected with the Greek text which you're reading right now. And there are 2 ways we can do this in a vocabulary app. First of all, we can actually, with software now, give you 3-sided vocabulary. So on side 1 is the Greek word, on side 2 is the meaning of that Greek word, and then on side 3 you've actually got a verse that includes that Greek word in it, so you can actually learn to see and identify that word in that Greek verse. This is something that most apps don't provide for you, but which I think is really helpful today. In addition to that, I think it would be really helpful for a vocab app to actually be able to include the Greek text of the New Testament and then give you the vocabulary for the text that you're reading. Now, there are apps out there like Gnoskos, which does do this. It gives you a piece of text and then gives you the vocabulary for that text. But what I'm sort of thinking about here is not just sort of looking at what a word in its context, but actually systematically learning to read the entire Greek New Testament, starting from the easy books and going all the way to the hardest books. And this is what we really started Master New Testament Greek and now BMA, all around this concept of learning the vocabulary so you can read book by book through the New Testament, starting with the easy books and finishing with the hard books. And I would like to see this integrated into vocabulary apps, and that's exactly what we've done. But I'll come back to that in a moment. So you want to be able to combine the vocabulary you're learning with the text that you're reading so you learn to read texts more thoroughly as you learn the vocabulary for them. Another feature which some apps do have, but you find this tend to be broken into 2 different apps. Often you'll have one app which is a vocab app, and then you'll have another app which is a dictionary app. And wouldn't it be great to be actually able to go through and find words you've already learned, look them up by meaning or gloss or whatever, and be able to review those words again just in a dictionary? This is something that I think is a no-brainer, particularly if you're going through and learning to read whole texts like this. It's really helpful to have a dictionary so that you can easily find words and find similar words to ones you're struggling with as well. So having a dictionary built into a vocab app, I think, is certainly something you want to be looking for if you can possibly find it. Another one which I think is really helpful is to be able to pick out words that are actually really hard. There are often words, particularly as you're learning to read the entire New Testament, which look similar to one another. And it's easy if you see one today and another one in a week, to get them mixed up and think that they're the same word. And so when you get those wrong, it would be nice to be able to have those fall automatically into a list that you can review regularly, where those words that look the same start getting mixed together. So this is a way of reviewing difficult words that are hard for you to remember, and we all have these. The classic one really is those words with prepositions on the front. You get, diatithemi and prostithemi, and you're like, oh wait, I get those mixed up. One of them, and they don't always mean the combination of the preposition plus the verb, and so they're easy to get mixed up. And so having an ability to sort of put those words you get wrong, automatically have them fall into another list that you can review whenever you want to, is really helpful. A difficult words list that's automatically populated is a huge benefit if you're learning to read the entire New Testament and you want the vocabulary for the entire New Testament. So I recommend you look for an app that does do something like that for you as well. Also, there are a number of words on the flip side that you will never get wrong, and like key or tutos or whatever it happens to be. There are going to be certain words that you learn very early on that after a while you're like, you know what, I don't need to keep reviewing this word. So the ability to exclude words from your regular reviews is actually another really helpful tool, and it helps reduce the number of words you're reviewing and also allows you to sort of exit out the back end of the whole review process by steadily just eliminating all the vocabulary you've ever learned from your review sets because you know it all so well. So that's another tool that I think is really helpful and reduces the amount of work you have to do to learn the vocabulary for the entire New Testament by just removing those words you know really well so that they just don't come up and take up your time anymore. And finally, and perhaps one of the most important things, particularly if you're really wanting to learn to read the entire New Testament in the original language, is you need to stay motivated. This is perhaps the biggest challenge. Now, in the past, I've recommended apps like Streaks, which is an iPhone-only app, which allows you to sort of just tap and hold on an icon, and then it will mark a task as done for the day, and then you can say, yes, I did my vocabulary today, go me. But wouldn't it be great to have a vocabulary app that actually rewards you and recognizes and gives you streaks like that when you actually do clear your vocabulary every day? And I think this is another thing that most vocabulary apps don't have things like that. They'll have gamification, they'll have you level up and things like that, but those aren't as consistent as things like streaks. And so having a streak type thing is really helpful, and I recommend that this is something you look for in a vocabulary app as well. Now, I don't say all of this just to tell you this is all of the functions and features that I've put into the app that I've been developing, but I have been focused on developing an app over the last couple of months for vocabulary review, at least initially, and it's come a long way and it's pretty much ready. If you are interested in checking it out, it's called BMA Tutor. So it's basically more than a vocab app, and it's free for you to use if you're a BMA member. If you aren't a BMA member, you can still pick it up for a pretty reasonable price, about $7 a month, I think is what we're charging for it. So if you are interested in that, it's got the vocabulary for the entire Greek New Testament in it. It does all of these features and more, and it's ready for you today. So if you're interested in that, go to tutor.biblicalmastery.academy. I'll leave a link down here if you're interested. And I'd love your feedback. What do you do for your vocabulary? What's your goals with vocabulary? Are you trying to read the entire New Testament, or are you just trying to get through those most regular, those common occurrences, the ones that occur 50 times or more, or 10 times or more? Let us know below what your goals for your vocabulary are. We'd love to hear from you down there. One other thing about BMA Tutor that we have done that is a little different to other vocab apps is it's a web-based app. It's not in any of the app stores, but it will work as an app on your iPhone or on your Android phone. All you do is just add that app to your home screen, and it just turns up on your home screen and functions like any other app. It includes the ability to work offline. It includes all that kind of cool stuff. It's fast, it's easy to use. If you're interested in that, go to tutor.biblicalmastery.academy or click the link below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know in the comment section below what your goals are for learning vocabulary. Tell us what app you're using for learning vocabulary. Tell us what you love about the app that you're using, or what you hate about it too. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. I'll see you in the next one.